Welcome to the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. I am your host, Ness Jones, and we'll be deep diving into all things separation anxiety. But before we get started, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another one. And don't forget, if you are interested in joining my easy step-by-step training program to resolve separation anxiety in your dog, you'll find the link in the show notes. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back. Today I am going to talk to you about the A.L.O.N.E method. So this is the method I use, that I developed and created and founded to help the dog learn to be alone. Now, some of the stuff we have already touched on in previous episodes. So if you haven't listened to them, I really strongly urge you to go back right to the beginning and work your way through them. They're only very short episodes, and I've done that so they're easy to digest. They're nice and short and sweet. And yeah, go back and listen to them first and then come back and listen to this episode. But what is the A.L.O.N.E method? So A.L.O.N.E, A.L.O.N.E. And I'm just going to talk you through each of these letters, and hopefully that helps to clarify things for you. So A is for assessing. We need to know what the dog's threshold is. And again, you need to go back to the beginning to listen to that and what a threshold is. But basically, it's the line in the sand, the panic line. So to do this type of training, we cannot do it. Well, I didn't word that very well. I appreciate that. But to do this type of training, we need to understand what the threshold is, because if we don't understand what the threshold is, where that line in the sand is, your dog is in danger of going over threshold. And we know what happens when the dog goes over threshold. It panics, and it simply instills in the dog that every time you walk out the door, there's a reason to panic. So we don't want that. So to be able to employ gradual exposure therapy and desensitization to those safe absences, it's essential to know what that threshold is. So A is for assessing. With the assessment, we nudge up to the line, the threshold, but we don't want to go over the threshold, because that is to the dog's detriment and to your training detriment. So we might get close to it, but we don't want to go over it. So this is where the next one, so this is where O comes in, but we'll get to O in a minute. But don't push your dog over threshold just to find out where the threshold is, because once you've done that, it could very well be that that threshold actually gets lower. So you could actually make it worse. So we don't want that. We just want to know what the threshold is so we don't go over it. So that involves an assessment using a live camera feed and keeping an eye on your dog, and maybe just looking for some of those more subtle signs that your dog is starting to just keep it together, maybe getting a bit more tense, etc. L stands for learning how to be calm when home alone. So L means using gradual exposure therapy. It means safe absences. So where the dog is feeling good or not good, because they never want us to leave. They're social creatures. They want to be with us. So they're never ecstatic that you're walking out the door, but they can learn to be calm when you do so, and they can feel safe when you do so. So you will have already heard me talk about the 4 C's: calm, confident, comfortable, and consistent. So we want them to learn how to do that. And to do that, we use gradual exposure therapy, we use desensitization, and we have safe absences only. O stands for observing the dog. So this is a twofold thing. This is a twofold letter, if you like. So observing the dog so it never goes over threshold. How do we do that? 1, we must have a camera with a live feed. So we're not looking at and I talk about this in another episode too, we're not watching a recording, because if your dog goes over threshold and you're watching it on recording, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't stop it before it happens. So we have that live camera feed so that we can watch it while it's happening. And if the dog is in any danger of going over threshold, you can get back inside and stop it, stop the pattern. Many dogs will have a pattern. And the other part of the observing is understanding your dog's pattern, understanding your dog's body language. What does your dog look like when it's starting to get a little bit unsettled, a little bit unsure, a little bit tense? All these things tell us that it is in danger of going over threshold. N is for nurturing calm home alone time. And this means by setting the dog up for success. Now, I talked about setting the dog up for success in a previous episode as well. So you've got a lot to go back to and listen to if you haven't already. But setting the dog up for success can mean, briefly, making sure they're not hungry, making sure they've toileted. When we're building foundations, making sure that they are ready to rest and relaxed. We don't want them in an active mindset where they're ready to go out for a walk or have some fun. We want them to be ready to rest and relax when we're building our foundations. We can get more complicated down the track, but right at the beginning, we want them as likely to have a successful training session as we can possibly manage. So have they had their exercise? Have they had their enrichment? They're not expecting anything. So they're not expecting play. They're not expecting an event. They're not expecting a walk. They're not expecting somebody to come home from work. So making sure they're just wanting to rest and relax. I go on about it all the time, but that's really important to build solid foundations. The more safe absences they have, the better. Because it just is reinstilling in them that being home alone isn't a cause for concern, but being over threshold is, because that means when they're by themselves, they're going to panic, and that makes things get worse rather than better. So we have to nurture that. We have to nurture calm home alone time by using, again, gradual exposure therapy, desensitization to safe absences. And then E is easy step-by-step guidance to ensure that the dog is the 4 C's: calm, say it with me, calm, confident, comfortable, and consistent. So calm, that's quite obvious. The dog is nice and calm. They're not worried about anything. They're just what they would look like if you were there and they were just having a rest, a lie down. Confident. Obviously, we want the dog to feel confident. If they're worried about something, if they're unsure about something, they're not confident. They're not going to be really feeling good about you not being there. So we really, really want them to feel confident about being by themselves. And that's such a big thing. I can't stress that enough, how important it is that they actually feel confident about you leaving. Comfortable, obviously, they're comfortable with your absence. They're not worried about it. And lastly, consistent. So consistent is maybe they do a really good training session where maybe, let's say they hit an hour home alone time. That's amazing. But is it a personal best? Is it a one-off? What is their consistent time? Maybe it's 40 minutes. Maybe it's not an hour. Maybe you've got that 40-minute window where they're going to be fine, but maybe that last 20 minutes, they're in danger. They're not really as stable as we would like. So that consistency is important. The other part about the consistency is consistency in training as well. So if you only train once a week or once a month, you're not going to build up that consistency. It's like teaching a dog anything, teaching a child anything, or even yourself. If perhaps you wanted to learn a foreign language. I learned German years and years ago, Deutsch. And ich spreche ein bisschen, and that was terrible pronunciation too, by the way. But because I haven't kept it up consistently, like I said, I can only speak a little bit. I can't remember most of it. I can remember a few keywords, but not much. So I haven't worked on this consistently. So obviously it's lost to me. So when you're doing your training, you need to be consistent. I'm not saying you have to train every single day. In fact, I discourage you to train every single day, but try to be at least consistent so your dog is having repetitive home alone time where they feel safe. And look, if you were teaching your dog to sit, doing it once and expecting them to suddenly know how to do it, obviously you wouldn't. Nobody expects that. So it's the same with this type of training. You must be consistent. But yeah, that's about it. So the A.L.O.N.E method is quite simple. So assessing the dog's threshold, learning how to be calm when home alone, observing the dog so it never goes over threshold using your live camera feed, and also observing their body language, nurturing calm home alone time by setting them up for success. And, there's a few things we can do to do that. I just mentioned a few, but go back to the other episode and listen to it more in full. And then easy step-by-step guidance to ensure the dog is calm, confident, comfortable, and consistent. And what do I mean by easy step-by-step guidance? I mean a very easy, gradual plan that is, when I say gradual, I mean time increases are very, very gradual. It is a gradual exposure therapy. That is the biggest danger you can fall into, is leaping up in time too much, and then the dog goes over threshold, and that completely undermines your training. If you need to learn more about my program, or if it's suitable for you, if it's relevant for your dog, please just reach out to me. I offer free 30-minute Zoom calls. You can book one on my website. It is nessjones.com. How easy is that? You can't forget that. nessjones.com. Jump on there and book a call to see if my program is relevant or not to you. If you cannot find a time on that, please let me know. I know people in the UK often can't find a very good time for them. Just shoot me an email, hello@nessjones.com, another easy one to remember. And you can book, I can manually book you, and we can talk about what time works for you and me. Just bear in mind that I am probably around 9 or 10 hours, depending on the clock changes, ahead of you in the UK or Europe-ish, just depends. The USA, it's a lot easier. But yes, so look, if you're listening to this, you probably do need help. It's confusing, and I can give you as many tips as I possibly can here on this podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, but you often need a little bit more hand-holding, perhaps more support might be a better way of putting it. And I have just the program for you, I am sure. But if you're unsure, if it is right for you, or you just want to check a few things off your list first, please reach out to me. Don't hesitate, because that's why I'm here. And we'll see you in the next episode. You have been listening to Ness Jones on the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes to learn more about my programs and how I can help you with tailored training. Until next time.